But I'll say this, if there is one thing that parents should understand, and this is just my opinion, and I want to get your thoughts on this. If there is something that parents must completely understand, and this has to get through to them, it's actually, rather than trying to learn so much about the game, right, about hitting, about the swing, about pitching, whatever, learn more about how to help your kids away from the field, right? When to talk to them when they have a bad game, when to levy the situation when they have a good game and keep things grounded, things like that. Again, having that conversation, that's a good way to coach your kids, so to speak, from home.
Yeah. And, I think being aware of your athlete has to start with you being aware of yourself as a parent too, because
Sure.
I see a lot of parents that have immense anxiety. They are so anxious about not doing what's best for their kid, or they're so anxious about missing something, and it just bubbles out of them, and you can tell the athlete feels it. And it's obviously that's a hard conversation to kind of look at a parent that's much older than you. And I'm a new parent. I have two stepsons now that are 5 and 3, but I don't have to deal with a teenage kid, obviously. And to try to tell them like, hey, your anxiousness is affecting your kid, that's obviously a very difficult conversation. So I think becoming aware of how you're feeling, why you might be feeling that way, then all of a sudden you can then become a little bit more aware of your kid and try to say, okay, well, why is she shutting down on me? Why doesn't she want to talk about this? Or why, instead of looking at your kid and being like, why did you take that pitch down the middle? It's like, hey, like, how are you feeling going into that bat? And, or, hey, did you seemed a little bit more relaxed in practice, and do you feel anything going into a game? And just start a conversation with that, because nobody likes to be asked, why did you take a pitch down the middle?
Right. And it's like, it's having, again, it goes back to having that conversation.
Yes,
Why,
exactly.
not so much why did you take that pitch down the middle, but what was your thinking in that moment? What were
Yeah.
you looking for? What was your approach going into that at bat? We talked about an approach on the Lab Epstein hitting podcast with 2 strikes a couple of weeks ago. What was your approach there with 2 strikes? Why did you take that strike 3? What were you thinking? What were you looking for? And then trying to kind of decipher through and get inside that athlete's head, to then now you can break through that wall and sort of make progress and help them along, get them to where they need to be and make those adjustments.
Yeah, I do think, same thing with a coach. There's certain situations you can tell the athlete's a little tense and maybe doesn't really know why. Like,
Right.
they're upset that they didn't do well, but they don't really know why, and that's even more frustrating. So it's, as a parent, and then, as a coach figure too, it's I want the athlete to do more talking. They don't need to be told what's going on. They need help trying to figure out. They need some questions that prod a little bit and say, okay, well, something that was really, because a parent can be really helpful. If you're a parent that's watching a kid's game all the time, it can be really helpful where you're like, hey, 2 weeks ago when you were playing, my dad used to say this. He's like, when you played Kentucky this one time, I just noticed, he's like, your rhythm looked really, really calm. He's like, when you guys played LSU, it looked a lot faster. Did you feel that at all? And I was like, yeah, I actually, I did feel a little bit more tense going into the at bat. And so it's just some slight observations that, again, there's a way to help the athlete. And probably too, my dad and I had talked about that in the past. So I think he probably realized, okay, this is a good conversation to have, because this is something we've talked about before, so I just think little things like that, like a parent's eye, can be really helpful, but it doesn't have to be the parent's job to break down the swing and say, hey, you're doing this with your swing, you're doing that, especially when you have a professional that you're trusting to help guide your kid in the swing or the throw or whatever that may be.
Yeah, and that conversation really helps exfoliate any little thing about that athlete's performance. And again, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media at Jim Tara and at Coach_CassieRB on Instagram, at Coach CassieRB on Twitter. All right. So when my dad coached me when I was like 9 and 10 years old, he used to tell me, don't ever call me dad when I'm coaching you. That was that rule. So I'm going to go something very elementary here and bring up this next point, separating that role as a parent from the coach. The rule in my house, don't ever call my dad. Only didn't coach me very long, but the rule always was, don't ever call me dad. I'm coach, which I don't like either, by the way. When it comes to baseball and softball, I don't like coach. It's always it's always the first name or not, or a nickname.
Yeah, it is interesting. I've I've thought of this too, like, hey, when I become a parent of an older kid, how do you handle that? Because I pride myself on being a really good coach. And if either of my kids want to go play baseball or softball and I'm looking at the swing, I need to probably swallow my ego and realize I might not be the best coach for my kid. And I think
Yeah.
that's an important thing to realize. And so I do think number one, it's removing the ego and being like, okay, it doesn't matter what I know, it's how my kid is receiving this. But then two, I think a lot of times, something as simple as like not calling your dad when it's coach mode is probably a really good delineating factor, because I'm sure when you were home you called him dad, and then maybe you don't talk about coaching things when you're home. Now, I'm not saying this is every situation. There's some really healthy coach kid relationships, but what I have witnessed is that the daughter doesn't know when it's her dad, and the daughter doesn't know when it's her coach, and she could get in the car after school and it's 4 days after the game and all of a sudden she got her coach. Or she could really be needing her dad because she's upset and she realizes she doesn't know if she has it or not. And I think that's at least what I've witnessed in teammates and in my current athletes. And it's hard. It's really hard. And again, it goes back to, I don't think the parent is aware how much that delineation of roles, or how confusing that delineation is, how much that's actually affecting the daughter.
So how do parents separate those roles then, from parent to coach, and how can they express that to their kid? Because there's an obvious distinction between the two.
Yeah, I think it's, again, it's getting to know the athlete, and then it's also it's kind of saying, okay, what does, it's looking in the mirror and saying, what does my team need from me right now? It's what does my
Right.
daughter need from me right now? And really, again, putting your ego away, getting awareness out of the way, and being like, okay, am I wanting to talk to her about her swing right now because I'm anxious that she's not going to do well, or is this going to be what's best for her? So constantly asking, like, does my daughter need me as a coach? Does my daughter need me as an athlete? And I'm not saying it's going to be a light switch. And if anything too, I think that the more and more conversations you have with your athlete, just honest, genuine, no agenda based, just, hey, let's have a conversation. You're starting to get to know your athlete. And in turn, that delineation, I think, will become a lot easier. And you might start to realize, you know what, my kid needs me as a dad on the way to games because she gets really anxious.
Yeah.
And then my kid needs me as a coach maybe on the way home because it helps her to break down the game afterwards. And this way she doesn't have to worry about it when she gets home.